Thank you. So we've had a very, very diverse set of views being expressed. The need for fiscal consolidation or the need for fiscal expansion. And all our speakers have been very, very persuasive, and we're going to hear what the others have to say. We'll see how the panel reacts. I thought I should tell you something, Shurujit. You know, you're not just anti-national. There are quite a few of us. You know, we've been told either you're good or you're bad. Either you're honest or you're corrupt. And if you oppose demonetization, you must be corrupt. I have a feeling that could be the case. Anyway, Ashok, you were a little worried that I would ask you like sort of below the belt questions. No. And he was also a little worried that in the company of economists, I mean, what is an accountant going to say? But I'm sure whatever Ashok Barat has to say will be of great interest to all of us. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Paranjoy. In fact, coming here is not a choice that I can actually ever deny. Anything that comes from the chamber, I have to always comply. And I'm going to talk about compliance in a minute. But indeed, I was worried as to what I would be talking about and why am I here in the company of such distinguished economists. Till Paranjoy assured me that in this cacophony of experts, often the voice of the Aam Aadmi, for whom the budget is ultimately intended, gets completely lost and not heard. So, and I know his political leanings. He has a little bit of a weakness for the Aam Aadmi, both literally and otherwise. And therefore, I said...
Are you suggesting the Aam Aadmi party or the Aam Aadmi?
I never said anything.
Okay,
you don't
you
read between the lines.
It's my guilty conscience speaking.
Since I've known you for many years, I know what your political leanings are. But anyway, on a more serious note, I have often wondered why a budget state or a budget discussion or even the budget presentation should be so somber and serious when if you essentially cut through all the hype. It is meant to be a statement of financial performance which the government or the executive presents to the people of India, and a business plan for the next year. And the people of India, of which 2011, 26% were illiterate, 90% of whom vote, and only 40% of the balance vote. Okay? So, you know, you are addressing a document which is to an audience which certainly does not match up to what is philosophically supposed to be. And I think this is a major issue why we get caught into this whole discussion and not realize some of the underlying issues that need to be addressed. And we all recognize that a budget is not merely a financial document. The way it has happened over the years, it has also become a document of political ideology. It has become a document of making social changes, and it is also a document which is supposed to influence even individual behavioral changes. I mean, that's the way we have gone to the extent to which we have gone in creating a budget. So with that background, I just wanted to touch upon a few things which I thought is an important context where this budget is going to come from. First and foremost, I think we will be increasingly inhabiting a world where someone or the other feels deprived of something or the other by someone or the other. Constantly. Okay? And this definition is expanding exponentially. One state versus another state, one individual against another individual, one gender versus another gender, one nation against another nation, one community against another community, you know, one institution against another institution. And if you keep on expanding the scope of the budget to try and address all these issues of not just the pure financial statement and the business plan, you are trying to address a hydra-headed monster which is trying to increase exponentially in terms of complexity. Okay? I have to give something to A state, then B state will feel bad. So I'll give one train to C state, which will terminate and pass through a D state, which has got nowhere to do, something to do with the route where between B and C. So, you know, we are trying to address too many complex issues in one single document, which I think is a very important aspect that needs to be borne in mind. Second, we will be increasingly inhabiting in a world where there will be very decisive leaders. They may be very ostensibly respectful of institutions, but they will be essentially opinionated loners who will take very hard decisions, whether you like them or not. They will be on your face, and you will have to, accept them in a manner that we have so far not been used to, and this is going to be a global phenomenon. Across the world, we are moving away from more benign forms of democracy and governance into more aggressive, on-your-face governance, and that will impact, therefore, the common man, because that's the way, opinionated people usually are bipolar in their views, so it's either black or white. So therefore, it's very, very important to understand that. Third, we will be increasingly living in a world where we will not just be influenced by technology, but at times even be assaulted by it. And that will leave us breathless because of the sheer size of the technological change that will influence our lives, but also the unpredictability. And that will spawn a whole host of behavioral and social changes, and therefore, inevitably, aspirational changes of people, and therefore that will have to be addressed in anything that we do from an economic context. So therefore, and the last but not the least, which Mr. Rajwade talked about, is creating employment. We have often talked about only creating employment for the younger generation. But with more and more investment and therefore improved care, preventive, geriatric care, and etc., there will be a larger number of people older in years, maybe less comfortable with dealing with technology, but unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on the way you look at it, having a similar degree of aspiration for consumption needs, and therefore the need for economic needs. This is going to be what is a demographic dividend today might turn out to be a demographic nightmare in a few years, because you will have to cater to a huge section of people who demand jobs, better lives, better care, better infrastructure, and this will be a very, very important thing that will need to be borne in mind. So therefore, if I were to, just step back and say, if this is the context, what do I think the budget would look like? And I must say that I have been partly influenced by the speech of the 31st of December. So therefore, you'll have to pardon me, there's some benefit of hindsight that I now have, because it was almost a kind of thing that gave a little bit of a window of
mini
light.
Budget?
Huh?
Mini budget?
I'm not used, don't put words into my mouth. I'm only saying the speech. Okay? But I have a feeling that given the political environment and the fact that there are elections coming, both at the state level as well as, there will be almost a Robin Hoodish flavor to the budget. Okay? And this is, I'm using this expression very consciously. Okay? Because Robin Hood, there are two ways to look at it. The one way to look at it, he was a bandit. And the other one was to look at it as a person who was creating a more equitable distribution of wealth. Okay? And in India, we have always had this problem that even if we ended up creating a lot of wealth, the distribution always was distorted in some form or shape. And with the advent of media, public consciousness, and the political hype that gets created with it, a kind of Robin Hood nuance is important for the political survival of any government that is in power. And this is going to get only accentuated as we go forward in this year and the next. The second one, which is correlated to the style of people who are going to be leading us, you will find a very prescriptive tone in the budget. Thou shalt do this, compliance, command, conduct. If you don't do this, you'll be penalized. This will be the penalty. It will not be one of those things that where the penalty is buried in the fine print. When the next day when the print comes and you go to one of the big four firms, they will say, oh, by the way, if section 263C is not done, you will have to pay a fine of 100 rupees per day. You will find that it will be explicitly on your face, a very more commanding tone in the budget, a more prescriptive tone in the budget, and therefore, citizens will have to be as much careful about what they do with their conduct than just merely looking at askance at the government to say what they should be doing. A very ironical twist to President Kennedy's speech on this. There will be obviously a very conscious and thrust towards use of technology. Now that has its own ramifications, and this can be across various spectrums. It could be for use by citizens, for use by citizens in accessing government services, for use by government in delivering government services, for dealing with each other, for dealing in their commercial and social transactions. The extensive use of technology will be a major focus. Now this has its own challenges. One is, I foresee that like you take hours to get into a street in Bombay, we will have a choking of e-highways shortly. Can you imagine? This issue of cashless is not about only being licit or illicit. If we have to move into a cashless economy where every transaction is done electronically, the amount of bandwidth that we require, the amount of CRM infrastructure that you would require for addressing the grievances of relatively less knowledgeable people who will be using these services, we will have a complete breakdown of infrastructure on the e-highway in the first place if we do not have it. So whilst there is going to be this enormous focus and thrust on modernism, it will create at the back end for the common man a huge challenge of keeping pace with it. And coupled with the fact that there is an aging population who are not so adept in using computers, who are not so used. For example, I mean, my parents, to get an Aadhaar card or to get an address change in Aadhaar card is a nightmare. And the more we move towards these, so whilst there is a very good part of modernizing and enforcing technology, the back-end infrastructure, we only talk about highways and airports. What about these things that need to be done, including inculcating a sense of CRM? And last but not the least, there is another concern, and this came from one of the things that I read, that a lot of people are actually finding the benefit of Manrega much better and sitting at home and getting that 100 days of work, guaranteed work, than going out to a far off place where there is a potential employment and learning a skill and doing a skill. It's better to sit at home. So if we are creating, through this Robin Hoodish flavor, a stronger, environment of creating entitlements rather than responsibilities for earning those entitlements, what will happen is that skill development and that effort development that would need to be made would probably be a victim. And I can see a situation where Make in India would be under threat, not because of lack of fund or lack of technology, but it will be because of lack of skilled people. Our whole education system churns out people, which is an inverted pyramid to the requirement of the industry today. So there are a huge number of social challenges which touch people like you and me. It's not merely about tax to GDP or fiscal, etc. And if this is what the budget is supposed to be, if this is not what the budget is supposed to be, then I think we should demystify it, defang it, and let it rest. And there should be an alternate mechanism by which these things are debated, these things are addressed, and there is a formal mechanism to make the government responsible not just for the output but also the outcome. And there is a very big distinction between output and outcome. So that's all that I had to say as an Aam Aadmi. And hopefully the questions, but I have only the questions. If I had the answers, I wouldn't have been an Aam Aadmi. So the questions will go to the rest of the panel.
You're talking like a journalist who knows the right questions to ask. He surprises me. Ashok Babu surprises me. I wasn't very sure whether I was listening to the former CEO of a company manufacturing water purifying equipment or a part-time professor in Surajit's university. But that's always the great thing about such panel discussions. Everybody surprises us.